Hello everyone, my name is Kane Carter. I'm the director of Popgoes. You might know me as the person who uploads the videos on YouTube and makes the news posts on GameJolt. I was the designer of Popgoes and Popgoes Arcade, and I also composed music for Popgoes Arcade. I wrote the story, or most of it. I made all the UI assets in the game. I basically told people what to do and when to do it, and how good things were and how things should improve. So I never programmed or modelled anything for the game, but I was the boss, the leader of the project. So yeah, I'm here to do a developer commentary, which some people have requested me to do. This is part of the Popgoes Creator Pack, so you might be listening to this or watching this through the Creator Pack, or maybe you're watching on YouTube or SoundCloud or wherever I put this. I don't really know yet. But I've got some topics here to go through. I've got 7 things to cover, and these are questions and things and topics and whatnot that people have asked me to go through for a while now. So some of these I've already explained through to certain people, but none of this has really been public. So here's a good time to do it. So the first topic we've got here is where the idea of Popgoes building Blackrabbit came from. Okay, so this is a good thing to talk about. So basically, Popgoes came about as an idea after Five Nights at Freddy's 3 was released, and we kind of went through the second ending, or the good ending of the game, and people were kind of wondering how a sequel could happen if the souls were freed in the good ending. And I come up with this idea that another pizzeria opened purely because of the hat. Because after Five Nights at Freddy's 3 came out, the next teaser that was released was the picture of the hat on the spotlight, and I made up the idea that someone took the hat from the auction that was hinted at the end of Five Nights at Freddy's 3 and made a pizzeria using the hat as for their own main character. And at this point, a lot of what Popgoes had, gameplay-wise, was based entirely on theories of Five Nights at Freddy's 3 before it came out. So one of these would be Popgoes building Blackrabbit. Now, Popgoes building Blackrabbit is entirely based on this theory that Springtrap would make a animatronic out of the toy heads in the box. Because there was an entire teaser dedicated to that box. I think people just call it the toy box. And the teaser was kind of pointless because it didn't have any gameplay mechanic. It didn't have any story relevance other than the fact that, you know, they found these toy heads and put them in a box. But, you know, Springtrap in the background, a lot of people thought that he was going to do something with those parts. So the theory that Springtrap would build this animatronic out of those parts was transferred into Popgoes building Blackrabbit out of 6 different parts. So yeah, and we took some other things from Five Nights at Freddy's 3. Some of them being the theories before the game came out, and some of them being gameplay mechanics in the game itself. So the fact that you can call Springtrap with the BB sound effect was sort of translated into the printing in Popgoes. It's entirely different in the fact that, like, you lure Springtrap in Five Nights at Freddy's 3 and you push Popgoes out of the rooms in Popgoes. And also, you can also shut down vents. Like you can close off vents in Five Nights at Freddy's 3 and Popgoes. But we did make it a little bit more unique in the fact that the vents are one big cycle, or one big circle, or was it circuit around the pizzeria, instead of just like these, you know, room to room vent distances. So yeah, the next topic is development struggles and stories. So I mean, this game took 15 months to make, from March 2015 to June 2016. I think that's 15 months. And that's not because the game had so much stuff. It did have a lot of stuff, but it's not because it didn't take that long because of that. It mainly took that long because we had 6 programmers, sorry. And whenever a new programmer was introduced to the game, they had to start from scratch because it's really hard to understand what the previous programmer was doing when they coded to the game that was complete. But thankfully, we did have a really good programmer at the end. Phil or Fiznom, you might know him as on the subreddit. He was the programmer for Popgoes Arcade, and he opted to do Popgoes after it took too long, basically. The deadline of the game being released kept getting postponed, so Phil was just like, he'll do it. And he did a really good job, and he improved the game quite a lot as well as he did it. But the struggles, I mean, that's one of them, the programmer situation. We also had some leakers, some blackmailers, some people who tried to hurt the game from the inside. That was mainly in 2015, though. I mean, I had to deal with most of the blackmailers and leakers and whatnot. That was a serious issue. A lot of the story was leaked before the game came out. I think the majority of Bonnie's storyline was revealed in late 2015, which is a real bummer for us. But yeah, I think mainly leakers and the programmers. That was the main struggle, and that's what took the game. That's what caused the game to take so long. But yeah, there's probably a lot more I can talk about here, but I'd like to move on. So the next thing is, how did the transition from 2015 to 2016 Popgoes evolve? Okay, so I don't know if all of you know about this, but Popgoes had two different stories, kind of, timeline-wise, because in 2015, Popgoes had a story, and in 2016, Popgoes had a different version of the story. A lot of things were kept the same, like Bonnie's storyline, Jeremy turning into Fritz Glade. A lot of them, I don't think any of the gameplay mechanics changed, but a lot of storylines, especially like with Simon and Strings and the Lux Animatronics and the meaning of Gravestone and Gemstone, they all changed in 2016. And the developers, or at least me, I like to refer to them as Popgoes 2016 and Popgoes 2015. The transition between these two happened in around Christmas time in 2015, obviously, and it was basically, I was just upset with how the game looked. The storyline was huge, but it was awful. It wasn't very nice. It didn't feel like anything was really closed off at the end. There was a lot of loose ends and plot holes, and a lot of stuff was forced and didn't make much sense. I've made some posts about 2015 Popgoes, but one of the things that stands out as pretty bad is that you used to play as someone called Mike Schmidt Jr., so Mike Schmidt's son, and you'd have this psychic connection with your boss, which is Fritz Glade, or Jeremy Fitzgerald. Spoiler alert! I really shouldn't say spoiler alert after I tell you the spoiler, but and this psychic connection between these two people was symbolized with gemstone, and the connection was called the London Bridge. And yeah, the London Bridge, it fell down just purely probably just because of the pun and the connection to the rhyme. But yeah, it was pretty bad. So that was all changed with Strings, for example, being the night guard. Simon was introduced as a character, as the Purple Man and as a robot. So yeah, the transition basically was at Christmas time. I was trying to just completely change some of the parts after I kind of realised how bad some of those things were. None of the rest of the team didn't really seem to notice how strange it was. I think Phil was pretty like upset with some of the decisions we made through the development of the game. So I think he was much more happy with the 2016 version of the lore. I think some things he was still like iffy on, but it was definitely an improvement, and I really prefer it. So yeah, hopefully that helps you understand that transition. Not much to say, but yeah. Next topic is, where did the concept of Strings and the Lux Animatronics come from? This is good. This is kind of like two questions, so I'm kind of cheating here, but Strings came about as a excuse, sort of. The puppet wasn't in the game. The puppet was never actually in the game. He appeared as like maybe an Easter egg or something, but he did not appear in the storyline at all. And it seemed weird because I didn't know whether Jeremy was afraid of the puppet, because he's afraid of all the toy animatronics, even BB. But I didn't know if the puppet would count. And in around Christmas time as well, so between the transition of 2015 and 2016 Popgoes, I decided that yes, he was afraid of the puppet. However, he's no longer afraid because he made one dream catcher that did work, that did destroy the fears of the puppet, and that was strings. And the concept of strings being this weird, like slender red spider thing that pulled on strings was my mom's idea. My mom came up with that, and then the design of the character was kind of pitched between me and an artist on the team called Pan Darcy. She did a lot of stuff for Popgoes Encore, and a lot of the she did all the sketches that you find in the mini games. So she's a phenomenal artist, and she had a really good idea of how strings would look. So that's how his design came about, and the story was kind of moved around a little bit to allow this sixth Dreamcatcher character. So we had Popgoes, Blake, Sarah Saffron Stone, and now Strings. And the others, so all the others apart from Strings, were turned into kid-friendly animatronics. Because Jeremy was kind of like confident that it would work, even though of course they wouldn't work because they weren't designed to attack the toys like Strings was. And you see Strings destroy the puppet in Popgoes Arcade in the introduction. So yeah, and then Strings was upgraded into security strings, and this was like a huge point for us, like where when we were just like, this game's going to be so cool, this game is going to be perfect. Now that security strings exist in the game, we can kind of just like, everything can fit together perfectly. We had no explanation as to why the phone flips up and down. We had no explanation as to why you can only view 90-degree angles. We had no explanation as to why the panic meter goes up and down on a little UI battery-looking thing. And then Strings came along. You played as a robot? How cool is that? And it works so well with everything we had beforehand, on like gameplay-wise. So yeah. Oh, and the phone calls. If you listen to the phone calls after you realise that you're a robot, the phone calls are kind of designed to have this double meaning. You'll notice a lot of what Jeremy says fits for a human being as a night guard, and also fits for a robot. So yeah, that's the concept of strings and security strings. It's still quite a lot to talk about, but I don't want to drag on too much. And Lux Animatronics. The Lux Animatronics came about as a dream. I had a dream of... Now this is a weird story, okay? Bakugan. Bakugan is this trading card game that used to come with these little plastic spheres that would open up once they hit a magnet, and they turn into like these little dragons or animals or monsters or whatever. And there used to be, I'm pretty sure, there used to be this set or this version of the Bakugan toys that were white with coloured accents. So if you had a green dragon, for example, there would be a version of it that was white that had green accents instead of the whole main colour being green. And I had this dream. I knew that it was based... like when I had the dream, I knew it was based on these Bakugan. And the dream was of the main characters of the Popgoes crew. But they were bright white, and they had glowing joints with the colour of their eyes, of what their eyes would usually be. Popgoes had a bright green hat. So basically, their core colours... So Popgoes is green, Blake is yellow, etc. They were glowing around them, but they were very clearly white-bodied. And they were angry, and they were running around, and they were jumping on walls, and they were ripping apart stuff. And it was so obvious that these weren't just like animatronics. They weren't nightmares, they weren't like designed to be scary, but they were very clearly something a little bit more supernatural than just an animatronic. And I pitched this design that I had in my head to Gunky Stuff, and Gunky Stuff is the guy who modelled Strings and Simon and Gravestone. And I gave it to him, and he had a go, and it looked perfect. It looked really cool. It looked amazing in an environment because they glowed, and the colour of their glow hit the walls and stuff, like how Popgoes looks in the Lux Popgoes looks in the main hall. It looks really cool, and I at this point I just I didn't really consider it as part of the story. It was just like, these can be really cool Easter egg animatronics, I guess. But eventually they did go into the story, and they were basically they represented potential of what Simon could do to Strings. So Strings thinks of these animatronics, of the Lux animatronics, in his head, because he mixes the Popgoes animatronics in his head with power, like this embodiment of power or light or whatever. And in the minigames, Simon is always the one who upgrades them. Simon's always the one who has this extra power to give them. And for Strings, this is kind of just like a motivation to keep obeying Simon, because to him there's like this end goal of maybe being like this better being. So yeah, that's kind of like the explanation of the Lux Animatronics. They don't have a big part of the story as much as like Simon or Strings or like even like Blackrabbit, but they are pretty cool, and they do have a purpose in the story. So yeah, they came about because of a dream of Popgoes. So yeah. How did you think of Gemstone and Gravestone? This is pretty cool. This goes back to March as well, March 2015, back when the story was only just being born. The idea of Stone having this alternate version of himself that was clear, transparent, and made out of glass was brand new. Nobody's ever done that. Nobody's ever made an animatronic out of a material other than felt and plastic. At this point, that really was the case. So having an animatronic made out of stone, literal gemstone, was amazing. It looked really cool as a design and as a model. And that was mainly because I wanted to have the wordplay of having a character called Gemstone, because that's just cool. That's just clever. And it just kind of came about at the point. It wasn't like something I worked hard to work. It was just like, because Stone's name is based on the phrase "Stone the Crows," which is like an exclamation of surprise or annoyance. And once that was kind of made as a pairing to Popgoes the Weasel's name, Gemstone was such a perfect fit, because there's Golden Freddy, and gold is this precious mineral, like precious material, and then there's Gemstone, and a lot of people will be, and obviously gem is the precious material there, and I reckon a lot of people were expecting a golden Popgoes, or maybe like a spring Blake, or maybe a shadow Popgoes or Shadow Stone or something, but no, nobody saw this coming, apart from obviously people in the development team. And I think a lot of people really liked him, because Gemstone has a very, very unique look. He's very calming. He's not threatening at all. He's like this crystal clear, clean, friendly thing. And yeah, that's him. He represents transparency. Gravestone was a little bit later on in the development of the game. He was never really intended to be in Popgoes. He was going to be the single character that you fought in Popgoes Silent Night, and Popgoes Silent Night was never released, unfortunately, because at this point in the development, when we were kind of working on Silent Night, I was so sick of it. I was so bored of working on the Popgoes series. So Gravestone was kind of forced put into Popgoes, the main game, as this trophy at the end. So in case you're unaware, Gemstone turns into Gravestone in the bad ending, or in the grave ending. So when you kill Jeremy and when Simon escapes, etc., the pizzeria is no longer transparent, because someone's died in there. There's a dead body in there. There's a dead body in the pizzeria, and a giant purple robot is now on the loose. Therefore, the pizzeria is no longer this a safe haven. There's now an obvious crime committed in the pizzeria. So Gemstone is no longer transparent. He's now opaque, and he crumbles away into this embodiment of death instead of embodiment of transparency. So Gravestone came about mainly because we wanted another stone variant, because the stone name puns were too powerful. I needed another one. So we came up with Tombstone. Tombstone was the original name, I think. And then there was also Bloodstone and Redstone and a few others. But Gravestone stuck out as this perfect, like, they both begin with G, Gemstone and Gravestone. They both have these chiseled like edges on their bodies and whatnot. So yeah, Gravestone is probably Gravestone's. I don't know. Gravestone's a really cool looking character. He's very unique. He's probably one of the most. I don't know. I don't think he's memorable because he only appears in the game like twice, but I reckon he was really. I think he's really cool. Really scary looking thing. I don't think that the main characters are designed that well, like Popgoes, Blake, and Sarah and Saffron. Yeah, I would change quite a lot about them. Oh, that's actually one of the questions, so I'll go that in a minute. Next one is, what is your favourite part of Popgoes? What's your favourite plot point and twist? Okay, my favourite part of Popgoes. I think my favourite plot point is Jeremy and Simon. Their bond and their like evolution in the story is really cool. I really like how that worked out because it was changed constantly. Originally, Jeremy's brother was called Wake, and Simon was just a robot. He was never meant to be Purple Guy. But eventually, I'm not going to go through that. But basically, this new version of the story has a very, very tight, perfect link between them, where Simon killed kids to save Jeremy, and Jeremy tried to save Simon. And Simon, it's like this, I'm pretty sure that it's very what's the word? Cyclic. It's a very cyclic. Is it cyclic? I think it's cyclic. Very repetitive saving system here, where Jeremy constantly tries to save his brother, and Simon tried to do the same. However, they both committed crimes for it. They both had to do something wrong, and they both had to be broken in some way. They were both mental. They were both damaged children, and I don't know. It's really cool, and the fact that they're twins explains a lot in the story as well. So Jeremy was bitten in the bite of 87 because the animatronics thought that he was the purple guy because they're twins, right? So I don't know if most people know about that. In fact, the development team didn't even realize how well that worked until a few months after the game came out. We discovered that the fact that Jeremy and Simon being twins sort of explains the bite of 87. It's really cool. So that's probably my favourite plot point, the whole connection between them. And twist, I think my favourite twist is Security Strings being the player. I think that was really cool. To see people's reactions to that was really quite fun to look over, because I didn't really help anyone come to that conclusion, or even I can't really help anyone beat impossible mode, which is when you unlock the extra screen of him. But I think that was really, really well projected into the game. You have to play the game twice to really appreciate the phone calls. I think I went through this earlier. If you play the game once, you'll automatically associate yourself with this human night guard because that's what you're used to. But when you play the game again, after realizing that you're a robot, the phone calls make a little more sense and a little more they're just a little bit more fun to listen to. And the gameplay mechanics, like I think I did mention this earlier as well, the fact that you turn in 90-degree angles and your phone flips up and down, yeah, it's really cool to have that twist that you are a robot. So, yeah. And you were going to be a robot in Popgoes 2 as well. So, yeah. If you don't know anything about Popgoes 2, I made a commentary about the concept art, and that's on my YouTube channel, so yeah. And the last question is, if you were to improve Popgoes and you were given full control, what would you do? Okay, so this is a difficult question to answer because I know a lot of people think that I think that the game's flawless. Okay, this is not flawless. There's absolutely a lot of flaws in the game. I think that the game is probably seen as, for most players, I think the Popgoes is seen as their favourite or the best fan game. But I would improve it, and I think that there's a lot of room for that. So one of the things I change is, first of all, I wouldn't have the game programmed in Click Team. I think Game Maker would have been a better choice. However, I don't know anyone who uses Game Maker. If I had access to someone, or if I had someone who was willing to take part in the game development, who had experience in Game Maker, I think that we would have preferred that because there's a lot less limitations, which ClickTeam had, and that forced us to change a lot of the game, like the fact that the jump scares are on different frames, which means they take a while to load. That wasn't deliberate. That is something that was caused because of the memory limitation on a single frame in ClickTeam. So I think GameMaker would have been a better choice just in general. I don't know much about programming for the game. I learned a lot through the months that people were working with me. However, I never really tried it myself. So I don't know too much, but I think GameMaker is just like an obvious better choice. Not sure, but I think so, yeah. And I'd also change the designs of the main characters. Like, for example, Toy Bonnie has this, on his stomach, he has this, like, bezeled out chunk attached to his belly. And with Popgoes, Popgoes also has that, but it's not bumped out. It's not 3D. It's like paint. I don't know why we didn't, like, make that more like the toy animatronics. And that really annoys me, because his face is so iconic and so, like, similar to Freddy, but still, you can still obviously tell if it's Popgoes or Freddy. And it's like the bumps on his like freckles, they're physically 3D, and like his eyelashes and the markings on his head, they look really cool. But then the stomach, the torso is just like this long brown just chunk. There's nothing really design wise showing off there. So yeah, and the same goes to Blake and the Squirrel Sisters. Stone is very boring. Stone doesn't have Stone is a very iconic character because he's dark, he's got red eyes, he's a crow, but his hair, he's still very boring, Toy Chica has a very similar design to Stone. Stone has a very similar design to Toy Chica. But Toy Chica has more of a creative concept because she has the bib and her beak comes off. And I think Stone's bland body is kind of made up by the sign he holds, but still, there could have been something more. So yeah, I think I'd change that, like the designs of the main characters, and I would try to make the game more scary, because at the point, like halfway through the development of the game, I decided to focus more on design, originality, and the story. And fear was something that a lot of people were kind of abusing in fan games. A lot of fan games came out that were just to make people scared. Like, I don't want to call out any people in particular because it's totally a design choice of what you do with your game. But, for example, the joy of creation was created with a lot of suspense and a lot of like loud jump scares, and it was obviously to get a lot of reactions out of people. But there wasn't any story, and it didn't last long. Like the lifetime of the Joy of Creation, like the original one, didn't last very long because it came out and people were scared and there were videos of it. But there weren't any brand new characters. So basically there was these two different genres of games, of fan games. There was these scary ones with not much to talk about, and then there were the less scary ones that were really, really, really fun to talk about. And I prefer to take the latter one because I didn't really like to, because I felt like I was better at doing that. So, like for example, the really good ones at being scary, but less to do with story would be like Final Nights and One Eye Flumpties, I guess. Yeah, One Eye Flumpties would count. The Joy of Creation, maybe even Those Nights at Rachel's, I guess, because there was a story, but it wasn't that big. In my opinion, I don't know. And then in the games that were like more centric on story but less to scare people, I think there was Five Nights at Candy's. That was the whole Five Nights at Candy's series is very clearly not designed to scare you. Five Nights at Candy's 3 might be, but the first two games definitely weren't. They were very clearly based on story and unique designs and stuff. And I guess Five Nights in Anime? Am I allowed to say that game name? Five Nights at Anime is clearly not designed to scare you. It's designed to give you some new artwork, I guess. And some people like that, some people don't. So yeah, I tried to focus on the latter, but I think that we could have made it more scary. I think that we could have done a little bit of both. But the limitations of click team did hinder that a little bit late into the game. I think the scariest thing in the game was probably Stone turning his head at you in the later nights. So yeah, we can do more. Alright, that's it. That's all I'm going to go through today. I will probably answer some more questions in the comments on like Game Jolt, maybe YouTube, maybe Reddit. But this is it. This is the developer commentary. I hope you guys really enjoy the rest of the creator pack. This has been in the making for 3 months since the game came out, and there's some really cool stuff. There's some really useful stuff, and some really fun stuff. So yeah, I hope this was fun to listen to, and I hope that you enjoyed learning a little bit more about Popgoes and the development of it. Thanks for listening.